Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture and a little book review today. I'm talking about The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Eddison, Eric Rucker Eddison, published for the first time in 1922 by Jonathan Cape in London. It is a really strange, wonderful, impressive piece of work, one that I highly recommend. The American edition came out in 1926, has illustrations by Keith Henderson that are really great. Not many of them, but they're really great, very evocative. It is heroic high fantasy set on an imagined world that the author sometimes calls Mercury. Seemingly the planet Mercury, but maybe not really the planet Mercury. It is written in this deliberately archaic style, almost like Jacobean English. Eddison was a British civil servant on the Board of Trade, a serious scholar of the Icelandic sagas, and apparently this was a world, characters, a story that he had imagined since boyhood, that he eventually put on to paper. Now the story, and I'm going to try to keep this non-spoilery to the best of my ability. It's difficult sometimes. But the story concerns this long war between the lords of Demonland and King Gorais of Witchland. Now, demons, witches, there are also a nation of ghouls, a nation of pixies, a nation of imps. They all seem to be, for the most part, human. There is a mention with the demons of horns. But we're not talking about like demons, and we're not talking about witches like on brooms and everything. It's one of the interesting parts of this book. And I remember the first time I read it, it was a little bit like, okay, all right. But then kind of figuring out, well, maybe they're not really demons. They're definitely not supernatural creatures. The book begins actually with, it has sort of, I call it a frame, except it's sort of abandoned after maybe a few chapters, of a man of earth going into this special room where he can essentially project himself into a different place. His wife, doesn't have time to do it. She wishes he'd wait in case he never gets back, but he goes and does it anyways. Maybe he doesn't ever get back. We first see things from his point of view. He's observing these things, guided by a bird, a martlet. And the martlets, as birds, they'll play a part later in the story. I don't know if that was meant to be a link, but he kind of disappears after a while. But once we get to Mercury, we first meet the demons in their great palace, their king. They have just finished defeating the ghouls, and they are visited by an ambassador from Witchland. And the king of Witchland demands that the demons submit to his rule, and they refuse. The witches had been part of this alliance to finally defeat the ghouls, who would go on this rampage every so often. And their ships sort of fled the battle. And the demons aren't real happy with them. But then to have that effrontery, it's too much for them. These are characters, the men in this book, who are, at least on the demon side, they have a belief in honor and dignity. They're easily offended, you could say. What follows this is a series of epic campaigns, quests, betrayals, single combats across this richly imagined fantasy world. The central figures are the four great demon lords: Jus, Goldry Bluzko, Spitfire, and Brandok Daha. And on the other side, the witches, primarily, is Gorais. Now, I believe it's Gorais the Ninth, who is the main antagonist in the book. And he's a sorcerer. We do have some magic appearing, but it's not like, casting spells all the time. kind of magic. And we do have supernatural creatures like hippogriffs. But the heart of the book is martial glory, loyalty, and the clash of these two very different temperaments between the demons and the witches. You could compare it, obviously, to the Icelandic sagas. You could compare it to the Iliad, to the Odyssey, in that search for glory that goes on. Now, Eddison's Mercury is among the early 20th century fantasy worlds that we got. In 1905, Lord Dunsany had given us the gods of Pegana, or maybe Pegana, I should say, since there is that little dash across the A. In 1912, we got Edgar Rice Burroughs and a Princess of Mars, the beginning of planetary romance. 1919, James Branch Cabell with Jürgen. 1920, David Lindsay, A Voyage to Arcturus, really weird book. E.R. Eddison, of course, in 1922. 1924, Dunsany again with The King of Elfland's Daughter. 1926, Hope Merrill's Lud in the Mist. Really, really, really good book. Also, Lovecraft writing The Dream Quest of Kadath. Was it Dream Quest? I'm probably getting that wrong now. In the early 30s, Clark Ashton Smith with Hyperborea and Zothique. Robert E. Howard's Conan and Hyboria. Tolkien, of course, in 1937 brings us Middle Earth with The Hobbit. And it wouldn't be till 1950 or so till we got C.S. Lewis. But we had, starting in 1905, these creations of fantasy worlds, usually with some kind of a frame for how we visit it. It wasn't just enough to say, here's this make-believe place. Okay, and I guess, what I left actually off the list, now that I think about it, is The Wizard of Oz as well, an American contribution, which, of course, had the whole concept of a tornado bringing somebody there because Oz was actually a real place on planet Earth. At any rate, we started getting these kind of concepts, and Edison's is one of the best in terms of just, man, you could just eat, drink, feel this place. And it's easy to compare it to Tolkien's Middle Earth. I mean, both men built these fully realized worlds from childhood. Both drew on the Northern sagas and the high heroic tradition. Both wrote elevated, deliberate prose. Now, with Eddison, I mean, let me give you an example. And I had to pick these carefully, so I wasn't going to give anything away. This first one is a small part of the description of Jess's palace, his castle, when our sort of observer first reaches it. Its walls and pillars were of snow-white marble, every vein whereof was set with small gems, rubies, corals, garnets, and pink topaz. 7 pillars on either side bore up the shadowy vault of the roof. The roof tree and the beams were of gold, curiously carved, the roof itself of mother of pearl. A side aisle ran behind each row of pillars, and 7 paintings on the western side faced 7 spacious windows on the east. At the end of the hall, upon a dais, stood 3 high seats, the arms of each composed of 2 hippogriffs, wrought in gold, with wings spread, and the legs of the seats the legs of the hippogriffs. But the body of each high seat was a single jewel of monstrous size. The left-hand seat a black opal, a sparkle with steel blue fire. The next a fire opal, as it were a burning coal. The third seat an alexandrite, purple like wine by night, but deep sea green by day. And again, that's a small example. He gets extremely detailed in these things. If you like that kind of thing, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. If you don't, if you just want him to get on with it, you're going to be disappointed in this book, kind of like you might be disappointed with some of the things Tolkien does. These are feasts for the imagination, for the mind, and you got to go there, ready to feast. Wear your big pants when you go in to read Eddison or Tolkien. Now, Tolkien called Eddison the greatest and most convincing writer of invented worlds he had ever read. Some key differences. Eddison's world is pagan in spirit, driven by glory, beauty, appetite, and the eternal return. Tolkien's is shaped by a Christian moral vision, providence, pity, the gift of death, eucatastrophe. Eddison's heroes seek the fight itself, while Tolkien seek kind of an end to the fight. Edison, again, his language, denser, more Jacobean. Tolkien, clearer modern English, raised to a high style when needed. Here's another another moment early in the book. I'm giving you sort of the middle of a fight scene, so you can see how he describes the action and also the kind of language that he uses. Now was the horn blown for the second bout, and they stepped into the wrestling ground. At the clashing of the cymbals, the king sprang at Goldry as the panther springeth, and with the rush bare him backward and well nigh forth of the wrestling ground. But when they were carried almost amongst the demons, where they stood to behold the contest, Goldry swung to the left and strove as before to get the king lifted off his feet. But the king foiled him and bent his ponderous weight upon him, so that Goldry's spine was like to have been crushed beneath the murthering violence of the king's arms. Then did the Lord Goldry Blisco show forth his great power as a wrestler, for, even under the murthering clasp of the king, he, by the might that was in the muscles of his brawny chest, shook the king first to the right and then to the left, and the king's hold was loosened, and all his skill and mastery but narrowly saved him from a grievous fall. So you'll notice in there, wrestling, not wrestling, murthering, not murdering, or murderous. So he's using this more archaic English, and it's a little bit like listening to a Shakespeare play. It's not easy reading per se, but you'd be amazed at how quickly you kind of pick it all up. Now, Eddison did visit the Inklings and read to them, and there was some mutual respect between them, even though there was maybe some philosophical difference in what they were doing. Is this a symbolic book? Well, not necessarily, but there are symbolisms you can pull out of almost anything because, well, obviously, everybody's writing about the reality that we all share, even though they might be writing from different viewpoints. You can pull out some different ideas from this, and I did. Gorais as this totalitarian appetite that must swallow everything and is never satisfied. The demons as men who have enough. They are satisfied. They have wives, great halls, people to rule, their honor, and they fight from this place of sufficiency. Honor is this bond of love and affection that makes the demons difficult to defeat. Fear is the weaker glue that holds the witches together. There are national and personal symbols in this, penance, names, legends, that are treated seriously as the real cement of real peoples. The hippogriff and its egg, kind of representative of higher things that require reverence and purity of heart before they can be approached. Again, I can't get too far into these things, but there's some big ideas hiding in this prose, but the prose is very much about action, about movement, about emotions. It's very material, but you can get some more of the material things out of it. But I will tell you, it's going to confound you in certain ways as you get to the end of the story if you read too deeply. And here I will put up my little spoiler sign, because I am going to talk a little bit about the ending. So if you haven't read the book and you don't want this spoiled, now's your chance to leap out for a moment. The ending is really not heavily symbolic, although it might appear that it is, but that's not the way that I saw it. What I saw in the ending of this book was a man at play. Eddison has told an adventure. It has run its natural course. He's coming to the close, and he simply does not want the pleasure to end. So in the mind's eye, the whole great game begins again. That refusal of the full stop is part of the book's peculiar power. For me, it remains dear because of its just high-hearted energy, its unapologetic love of action and glory and loyalty and passion, the music of its language, the way it holds this, it's just magnificence put to the page. The fact that it does not have some deeper meaning is just fine with me. But I think you can learn things from it. It is a book that one probably finds either too much or they simply cannot get enough of. I am firmly in that second camp. If you love fantasy, especially high fantasy, I would say chivalry, but not really chivalry, more just like men-at-arms, doing great deeds, making great vows. If you enjoy Tolkien, it's different from Tolkien, but there's a through line. If you enjoy early 20th century fantasy and for some reason have not read this, if you're a D&D player, you need to read The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Eddison from 1922. It is a fantastic book. I've read it a couple times now. I will read it again in the future, because sometimes you just need to soak in that power and that beauty and just kind of, just sort of marinate in it and let it fill you and get you back on track. Let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them there. I'll try my best not to, I guess we should bring down the spoilers. I will try my best not to spoil anything for you. But until now, if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. Read The Worm Ouroboros. You can find it on Project Gutenberg. And you can find an audio version on YouTube, which is what I was listening to prep for this. It is very long. Guy has a wonderful Scottish accent, reads it beautifully. I enjoyed every minute of it. But I mean, when I say every minute, there's a whole lot of minutes. And that might be a good way to handle it. But great to read on the page as well. But it is out there. So give it a read. And I will hopefully see you again soon in Dad's Den.